sure it doesn't do it dumb. Okay.
All right.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to this
Hi.
reading of Leslie Cohen, The Audacity of a Kiss. Could everyone please mute yourselves? Thank you very much. That'll just help with the audio. So welcome. My name is Greg Newton.
I'm Donnie Jokum. Hi.
We are the co-founders of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division in New York City. The Bureau, we like to say, is a government agency for a government that does not yet exist. And the primary service we provide is hosting queer books, queer culture, and queer people. So our space has reopened. We are inside the LGBT Community Center on 13th Street on the second floor. So please stop by. We're open now Wednesdays through Sundays, 1 to 7. We have Leslie's book there amongst many others. And we also have a great art exhibition up by Paul Moreno, which is going to be up for the rest of the year. So we hope you'll stop by and see us. I am super excited to welcome Leslie Cohen here tonight. I really enjoyed the book, as I was just telling Leslie. We have a lot in common. I'm excited to talk with her, but I'm also excited to hear her read and share some amazing stories from a really exciting time in New York, not to mention the country and the world. So I'm going to introduce Leslie. She's going to read some, and then we can do a Q&A. If any of you have questions, you can put them in the chat function. Or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Just maybe raise your hand first so we don't have a cacophony. But let's get started. So Leslie Cohen has been a museum curator, a nightclub owner and promoter, a limousine driver and a lawyer, as well as a writer whose work has appeared in such publications as Curve and the New York Times Style magazine. Now retired, she and her wife Beth live in Miami, Florida with their cat, Birdie. So please give a warm and visual welcome to Leslie Cohen.
Hi.
Leslie.
Hi. Thank you for having me. This is great. My New York crew, right? Really, I wanted so much to be there in person, and just see everybody, but COVID did not permit it. But anyway, this is great. And again, thank you to you guys and to the Bureau. I'm going to read from my book, The Audacity of a Kiss. I'm going to just give you a little bit of a setup so you know what was going on. And basically, my motivation for writing this book was twofold. On the one hand, I was kind of pissed off and angry that after 30 years, nobody had written anything about Sahara. Nothing, nowhere, nothing. And to me, Sahara was, a groundbreaking club in many, many ways. The most important way, I think, is that, for the first time, women owned the club, not the mafia. So that became, a major groundbreaking event. Also, it was a club that showcased a lot of, because it was the first club that wasn't mafia-owned, a lot of people who were active in the gay and lesbian movement. It was the early years of that movement, and also the feminist movement, the second wave. Would come to the club to show their support. So we had a lot of celebrities, Jane Fonda and Gilda Radner and Jane Curtin, and Pat Benatar was like our house singer, and Patti Smith, and so it was really, and of course we had Bella Abzug, and it was the epitome of New York, a wonderful woman, Gloria Steinem, Betty Friedan, all these people came. So I had been in the art world I had my master's degree and I was working at Art Forum magazine. And then I became a curator of the New York Cultural Center. And then I opened Sahara with my partners, Michelle Floria, Barbara Russo, and Linda Goldfarb. So what I'm going to read you is how I made the transition from being in the art world to being a nightclub owner. All right. This is from a chapter called Freedom Calling. Hold on one second. After the club opened in 1976. After the club opened, I quickly realized that I was being seduced by the nightlife. The women gathered together like a unique and solidifying tribe, a sea of bodies dancing together under the strobe lights. Disco music was the predominant soundtrack of the time. Music was everywhere in the club, playing in the background in our basement office and emanating from the jukebox in the lounge or the records being spun by the DJ in the upstairs discotheque. We danced for hours on end, united in mutual elation by the shared freedom and stoked libidos. On the dance floor, my senses were always aroused. I detected other people's eyes on me because I was one of the owners, even when I closed my own to totally lose myself in the beats and deep reverberations of the bass speakers entering my core. I relished the recognition and attention I received. I wanted my customers to know that I was part of them, equally in love with the moment, the music, and the frenzy of abandonment. Often I played the tambourine and marimbas with a small group of women clustered together on the dance floor, jamming to the music blasting from the tweeters and bass speakers, a symphony conducted by the DJ from her booth. The bartenders joined in the dancing from behind the bar. The sounds from the speakers ricocheted like bolts of lightning across the room, bouncing off the walls. The packed dance floor of women was driven wild with the cacophony of the loud pumping rhythms and the camaraderie that filled the air. This was our club. We created this, and these jubilant participants were my extended family. Sahara was a primal manifestation of and reconnection to the most joyful parts of my childhood, being around the women in my family, music, and dance. Those things were the antidotes to my fears as a child, caused by a father who was deeply wounded and whose damage infected not only his own life, but also that of his wife and children. This club was an extension of that antidote. On the dance floor, under the lights, I found my place in the world. I'm going to jump, so I'm not going to read continually from one part. I'll just go over different areas of the book. There were often some insane event at Sahara that made us laugh so hard we cried, but especially on Thursday nights with the live acts, you never knew what to expect. One particular night stands out because it really demonstrated the breadth of our audience. On this night, the club was filling up fast for the show. The bartenders were working frantically, turning out drinks as if they were on an assembly line. The waitresses were pushing their way through the crowd, trays filled with drinks balanced precariously over their heads. When the entertainment arrived, we shepherded them downstairs to the office to dress and prepare for their show. In the office, the activity became nearly as hectic as upstairs. The act prepared to go on. The female singer was now half dressed, touching up her makeup and discussing cues with her band, while the club staff and other assorted people filtered in and out of the office, barely noticing her. All sense of propriety was gone because there was just not enough space to be modest. Behind all this activity was the din of the customers and the music upstairs, mixed with the sound of clanking pipes from behind the walls and water running through them like a stream through the office. Michelle and I sat behind our desks, stacked high with papers. I was writing reminders to myself in a spiral notebook. The phones always rang nonstop. We robotically answered these calls because the questions were repetitively the same. Quote, yes, 1234 2nd Avenue, 65th Street and 2nd Avenue. No, she's not working tonight. The show starts at 11. Yes, the disco opens after the show. Yes, men are allowed if they are accompanied by women, but make sure they're well behaved and respectful. Occasionally, if the phone was picked up at the upstairs bar, we might hear a knock on the pipes, our makeshift intercom system, which signaled something important that needed our attention. So we would pick up the phone downstairs in the office. I looked at the clock. It was 11 p.m. I turned to the singer, quote, figure that you'll go on around 11:20 p.m. Give everyone some extra time to settle in. It was 11:10 when I told the band that I was going upstairs and instructed them, quote, at 11:15, 11:20, come wait by the bathrooms and I'll announce you, unquote. Each Thursday night was filled with anticipation. Is it going to be a good night? Will we be crowded? Will they like the show? Are we going to make money? The upstairs was jam-packed on this night. I pushed my way through the crowd and yelled out to Michelle, okay, I think we're ready. I looked at the girl behind the bar and yelled over the crowd, kill the house lights when you see me on stage. The girl couldn't hear me, so I repeated it louder. Kill the house lights when you see me on stage. Do you know how? She answered, I think so. Frustrated, I said, would you please learn how to do it? Michelle saw that I was rattled and said, go ahead, I'll do it. I made my way through the crowd, saw the band waiting to go on and gave them a nod. After they took their places on the small stage, they began to tune their instruments, so you could hear the sounds of tightening guitar strings being plucked and drumsticks beating on the snare and cymbals, while the foot pedal banged against the bass drum, the preparatory musical discord that suggested what was to come. I stepped up onto the stage and signaled Michelle. The stage lights went on. The house lights came down. I looked out at the darkened room filled with women and some men, took a deep breath to calm my nerves, and turned on the microphone. Quote, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sahara. Would you please join me in giving a warm welcome to Pat Benatar? Unquote. You obviously love Pat Benatar. She's a wonderful woman. She's a really sweet woman. Okay, so now the other thread running through the book is the fact that I went to school back in 1965 with Beth Suskin, and we became close friends. There was always something between us, but back in 1965, we didn't have the words to describe it, nor were we willing to subject ourselves to the kind of shame that surrounded homosexuality back then. This was before the DSM changed the designation of homosexuality from a mental illness. So everybody considered you mentally ill if you were gay. It was not a time that you wanted to come out, and it was not something that was on TV or shared or talked about. So it was very, very taboo. So whatever was going on between us, we didn't know what it was. All right. 11 years go by. Beth had transferred. We didn't see each other for 11 years. And on the eve of opening this nightclub, Sahara, Beth, by accident, entered my life again. She ran into some mutual friends and we got together. There was definitely something, again, we didn't use the words. I was gay by that time. Like I said, I was just on the verge of opening this nightclub, this lesbian nightclub, or I call it a nightclub for women. So Beth had always been very straight, really was boy crazy. And, but when we ran into each other, again, we fell in love. There was no doubt we were in love with each other. She had then been divorced and was now living with another man named Stephen for 3 years at that time. So, so I'm going to try to give you the backdrop of this. When we fell in love, we would sneak, because she was living with Stephen. We would kind of sneak our time together. So on the nights that I worked at Sahara, I'd climb into bed at 6 a.m. after a long night, only to be awakened at 7 a.m. by Beth's phone call. Stephen's left to go upstate, she'd say into the phone. I'm coming over. I'd anxiously await her, eager as a teenager. I'd unlock the front door so she could let herself in, and then I'd try to fall back asleep. Of course, I made sure to position myself so that I would be enticing to her when she opened the door and saw me. One arm behind my head, like a reclining odalisque. My naked, you'll relate to that odalisque, I'm doing like a Manet here. My naked body covered by the blanket in just the right place. When Beth arrived, she'd quietly enter the room and climb into bed next to me. She'd gently wrap herself around me and we'd fall back to sleep in each other's arms. When we awoke, we hung out in my living room for hours on end, talking about our lives, drinking amaretto, and listening to Stevie Wonder's songs in the key of life. She often pulled me up from the couch to dance and hold me to her, every part of her body pressed against mine, so that we could feel the blood running through each other's veins. She would softly sing in my ear, "Knocks me off my feet." Music again deeply connected us as it had in the past. From the narrow window of time we had together, before Stephen returned from his trips, my living room transformed into a magical kingdom of suspended shimmering air particles, swollen minutes of time, and utter bliss. I can only imagine that it was like the sensation of those spiritual few who have experienced ascending into the light. We were lost in each other until we were forced by the repulsive ticking of the clock to disrupt our spell and pay attention to the real world. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Each minute that passed meant that Stephen was 1 minute closer to returning home when she would have to leave. We dreaded it. The passing hours became our worst enemy. To remind me of her when she wasn't there, Beth left rose petals and pearls in a glass vase that sat on my windowsill so I would remember her presence. Okay, we'll just take a sip. After a number of months, Beth finally left Stephen, and we moved in together after some time. And so this is about us living together afterwards. Beth was the refuge that I returned to after my nights at the club. Grungy, exhausted, and stinking from booze and cigarettes, I undressed and climbed into the deftly made bed that she had prepared and felt a wave of purity and cleanliness envelop me like a baptism. Pressing against her warm skin, I would kiss her neck and inhale her scent as she slept. Gently, I'd lift her nightgown above her waist, trying not to wake her, and rest my head in the small, deep crater of her back, just above her butt, which was covered in a delicate down and held my head perfectly like a cradle. Then I would slide a bit further down her body and softly kiss her bottom, with its skin as untouched and precious as a child's. There I would rest my head until the mixture of her nakedness and scent calmed me down enough from the adrenaline rush of the night to move back up to my pillow. With her image fading under my eyelids and her body next to mine, I'd fall asleep. Okay. Now, also, when you read the book, you will see that Beth and I were asked to be the models for the Gay Liberation sculpture, which is in New York, across from the Stonewall Inn in the park. It was back in 1979 that we posed. It's interesting because it was very hard at that time to get people to want to pose, because by doing that, they would be outing themselves and taking the chance of losing their jobs or their children or, their parents or whatever. So, a lot of people did not want to pose. Through my contacts with the art world before I opened Sahara, I knew this guy named David Boyce, who worked at the Cine Janus Gallery, which was the predominant gallery, one of them for the at the time, and also known for its representation of pop artists. So I'm reading from the book. David had already asked a mutual friend of ours to participate, a well-known art historian at a prestigious university from the days when we all hung out together at David and Manuel's loft. That was in the early 70s. She was hesitant about posing because she feared being outed to her parents. I told him about my relationship with Beth. I said, if George Segal truly wanted to capture a special relationship between two women, Beth should be the one to pose with me. He agreed. I was excited at the thought of the monumental impact this sculpture would have for gay people everywhere. Not to mention that Beth and I would now be immortalized in a public sculpture permanently installed in New York City. It signified everything that mattered to me: art, our love, and visibility, and would positively impact the world's understanding and acceptance of homosexuality. A few weeks after David's phone call, Beth and I were sitting in George Segal's studio, a converted chicken barn on his farm in South Brunswick, New Jersey, where his family had lived and raised chickens since the 1950s. We were in awe of the sculptures arranged around the studio. Some were life-size statues of ordinary people in white plaster, posed in different positions and settings, and other were just heads cast in plaster and painted in bold primary colors, hanging on the white walls. It was kind of eerie, like a funhouse filled with ghosts and goblins. George took us outside to a long park bench where the sculpture would eventually come to life. We discussed what the sculpture would look like and posed in various seated positions on the bench while Segal took countless photographs. We encouraged George to show the intimacy that existed between us and to not avoid the sexual component of lesbian relationships out of a sense of propriety. We asked him not to camouflage us to the extent that observers might misinterpret us to be, quote, just friends, unquote. When we were finished, George and his wife, Helen, treated us to Chinese dinner at a local restaurant. Our second trip to the studio, George knew the exact pose he wanted. The sculpture would depict a life-size male couple standing a few feet away from a female couple, sitting together on a park bench. One of the men holds the shoulder of his friend. One of the women touches the thigh of her partner as they gaze into each other's eyes. In a process that George pioneered, he used moistened plaster bandages, gauze strips designed for making orthopedic casts, as a medium, and wrapped us in the bandages until they hardened. First our legs, then our midsections, and finally our heads. Straws were inserted in our noses so we could breathe. The sections were then cut off us and put back together to form a hollow cast that would then be cast in bronze and finally painted white to resemble the original plaster. After he was done plastering us, we left our cutout selves on the park bench in the studio and once again joined Helen for dinner. Then George drove us to the station to catch the train back to New York. I just want you to know, I'm saying this for you, Greg. When he drove us back to the station, he was also picking up Lucas Samaras. Do you know? Yeah, which is a fabulous artist. And so it was like, this was like a dream come true for me meeting these people. I mean, they were so, big in the art world. So that's basically my reading for now. I mean, I would love to answer questions, and I hope that is that enough of a reading?
That's fine. I mean,
Okay.
I can hear you read from
Yeah,
heart.
as much as you want.
I don't want to overdo it and start to see people's eyes rolling back in their head. But but
Yeah,
ask me questions,
Yeah.
please.
You can either put them in the chat function or just unmute yourself and ask a question. So yeah. I was telling Leslie before we opened the event that I was doing a PhD in art history at CUNY. And so there was so much in this book that I identified with, the fact that you were in the art world and then decided, not going to do the academic route, which I did for a while. And then opening a club, we opened a queer bookstore. So there was so much that I felt like,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
That's
we
a
have
big
yet to host, we have yet to host Pat Benatar, but
Yeah. If it's not Pat, then damn it, Joan Jett. They're my wish list. They're my wish list. So
Yeah. I
and
mean, it was really some amazing times at this club because we had, I remember, for one benefit, I think it was for Carol Bellamy, who was running for city council president, Manhattan. And we had Gilda Radner, the late Gilda Radner, fabulous, Jane Curtin, Lorraine Newman. And in the audience was Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan and Robin Morgan, a lot of well-known feminists. Incredible night. And Gilda Radner and Jane Curtin used to do a bit on Saturday Night Live imitating Gloria Steinem. So they did the bit with Gloria Steinem in the audience. It was great. This was like an incredible thing. I mean, this wasn't a big club, but it was filled with all these incredible people. And I think that was the night that Pat Benatar, not Pat was there, but Patti Smith made an appearance, and I didn't even know she was coming. And she got up on the stage and she was reading her poetry. She had become a singer, but Patti Smith was known as a, kind of a poet, an artist, way before she began singing. So she was up on stage reading this poetry, and I should probably read you that section, but she used the word tits. And back then in 1976, 77, with the second wave of feminism, that was a real no-no, because it objectified women's bodies. And so people went, some of the people in the audience started booing her. But it was interesting because this was the older generation of feminists. There's this new generation of young women applauded her. They loved it. They loved her braggadocio. They loved her, her like, I don't give a damn, and when it comes from a woman, in the word tits, you use the word tits, it's a different thing. And so they were applauding. So I felt like, and it was an incredible night, I felt like I was seeing an evolution in front of my eyes, in the early days of it. And it was the evolution from a kind of very defined, almost myopic view of what feminism was to a broader view that encompassed more people, which was one of the purposes of creating Sahara. So this was a real highlight for me in the club. I'll never forget that night. Yeah.
Leslie, do you have a
Hey, sweetheart.
Hello, my darling.
Hello, honey.
Hi.
Hi.
Tell me, and maybe you already described it. Maybe it was the Carol Bellamy night. Do you have a favorite night or a favorite memory?
Oh,
I think that was probably my favorite night. I was so nervous. I mean, here I am, this kid from Queens, and I'm introducing Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan, and I'm like freaked out. I'm a wreck. I'm an absolute wreck. I mean, I was sweating down to my waist, and I introduced them, and then at the end, after all the speakers came on, Robin Morgan, all these women, Gloria came over to me and said how wonderful my opening speech was. And I thought I was going to pass out. I just, love this woman, and, so it was really a wonderful experience for me. It really was.
How about funniest story? Do you have a funniest story, do you think?
Yeah, thanks, sweetie. one of the stories that's in the book, which I'll share, is that, oh, we have so many funny stories. We were hysterical laughing all the time. It was just like, especially at the end of the night when you hung out and it was like after this 5 in the morning and you're all hanging out together and you're smoking a joint and you're just like, trying to come down from the insane adrenaline rush of the night. And you're all sitting around passing the joint and getting like high and laughing and carrying on and reliving some of the stories. One of the stories was, I remember, which I put in the book, is these 3 big guys, obviously straight guys, came to the door of the club and were starting to make a fuss because one of the guys was looking for his wife. Again, this is now 1970s, so, and he's like looking for his wife and he's making a fuss. He wants to come in and he wants to walk through the club. And we obviously didn't want this big guy walking through the club. So we said, all right, we calmed him down. We said, listen, just do me a favor. Wait here with your friends. I know who your wife is. He told us. I said, we'll look for her. And, and then if she's here, we'll tell you. So we knew she was there. So we go through the club, we run up to the disco. She's dancing all over a woman, she's totally engrossed. And we grab her and we say, your husband is downstairs, and she freaks out. And we hid her in the stairwell that led down to the exit of the club, but nobody would go in there. So she's in the stairwell. And we go back to the guy and we say, you know what, we can't find her. We're so sorry, we can't find her. And then he said, I said, if you'd like, you can walk through, we'll walk with you. And you could look for yourself. Okay, same thing. We walk them through the club where they're now calmed down, but they're with us. And then they finally leave. They realize she's not there. Well, we forgot she was in the stairwell. We had the loud disco music blasting, and she was in the upstairs where the disco music was. And then finally, at the very end of the night where everyone was gone and it got quiet because we were cashing out all the bartenders, we heard, help, help. We finally let her out of the stairwell. But we had a million stories like that. I mean, so many things like that.
I have to say, even today, driving down or on a bus down 2nd Avenue, I can't help but turn left and hope, like some sort of brigadoon, that the club just doesn't show up again.
Yeah.
It's impossible not to look every time you go by.
Yeah.
There's something
I totally relate, of course.
Mhm.
Totally relate. Yeah, now there's a high rise, which is part of the story. Yeah. It was.
Hey, Les, it's Thea.
Hi, sweetheart.
Hi, honey. How are you?
I'm fine, babe. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm like felling. I'm just over the moon that
These
this
are
is
like
all,
my buddies.
yeah, all really happening. And I heard something that made me curious when you talked about the why you did it and what you were concerned about. How much of being concerned financially was in the background or the foreground for you, either in opening it or day-to-day paying bills? Were you, because you're so driven by making a difference and making a difference for the gay community and the fun and the art and the love, that's so obvious. So I'm just curious about the amount of intention or attention or concern around the financial piece of it for you and your partners.
Well, we were so interesting because we were initially looking for backers, and we kept looking and looking, and then we'd have somebody, and then that would fall apart, and then we had these other 2 guys, which was really kind of like a joke, and that fell apart. Again,
Right.
This is all in the book, but and so in the end, we had to raise our own money. Now, I don't know, most of you are not my age, but if back then it was impossible for women, it really was very difficult. They couldn't get a credit card without a male signature.
Right.
So women had a lot of difficulty opening their own businesses. is a real kind of like trap in a way, you know. But this was what feminism was about, and it was starting to change, but you know, it took many, many years, and it's still, as we know, an issue. But we had to find people to co-sign loans for us because we ended up having to take loans when the backers fell through. And I was like the last person able to get somebody because my other partners had lovers that had assets or their father or, you know, something like that. But I couldn't get it. And I finally, you know, just started dating somebody, Carol Lee, who some of you know.
Yeah.
Carol Lee Shepherd. And Carol Lee, we were out to dinner and I told her that I may have to back out of this whole thing. And it was after months and months of work. I said, because I can't raise the money. Nobody in my family had money, you know. My mother gave me her life savings, which was $1,000.
Right.
And, you know, and finally, Carol Lee said, I'll co-sign the loan for you. Carol Lee had some assets. She owns it, you know, she had a high level job. And so she was able to do that. But all during the process, you know, of course, we wanted to make money. I mean, you know, I had been in the art world. I think, Greg, you'll get a kick out of this, but when I worked at Art Forum, I made $7,100 a year, you know, and when I became a curator of a museum, I got boosted to $11,500, enormous raise. And so, you know, we started to make some money. And then, you know, as the club, you know, rode its wave, there were times we made money and there were times we didn't make money. So, you know, that was always very stressful. And of course, when the club closed, we were totally wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I became a limousine driver.
Right.
With a hat.
Right.
I looked like, you know, like a character out of The Night Porter. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that S&M film. Beth loved it. Loved the
I was
look.
gonna say it's fabulous. Hot.
Loved the look. Yeah. So.
Leslie, Gary has a question.
Oh.
Gary's hand is raised.
Hey, there he is. That's my cousin.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi, sweetheart.
Thank you so much. And I have two questions, actually. The first one's purely logistic. If I order a book through the link that you sent, is that autographed? Or do I have to get it autographed on my own?
You have to get it autographed on your own.
All right, well, that's easily done, right?
Right. Just come on down.
I'd like to. And so I know that, you know, you have a lot more visibility than many people, you know, because of the statue, because of this book now. And I recall, it's crazy. Today on a Facebook memory, I saw a post about being a best man for my friend's wedding back in 2014. It must have been right around this time when gay marriage became not illegal, I should say, not illegal in New York.
Right.
And I recall at the time, right around then, if I recall correctly, weren't you the Grand Marshal of the parade in New York City?
I was. Yeah, I was never the Grand Marshal, but in 2016, we were asked to be in the parade.
Okay.
And I didn't want to make the trip from Miami to New York. You know, it was like, it cost money. I didn't have the money. Blah, 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 blah. But then Pulse nightclub happened. And it really freaked me out. Like I'm sure it freaked everybody out. Really upset me. And so I said, okay, we're going to go and we're going to be in the parade. Well, they put us on the first float that opened the parade.
Yeah.
And we were on the float with the Pulse nightclub people. It was so amazing. And that's the same, I'm sorry, did you want to say something else? Because I was going to tell you more about it.
Continue.
So what happened was, so we come to New York to be in the parade, and we're staying uptown at our friend Bonnie Levy's apartment. And we go down to meet a friend of ours for lunch, Elaine Gold. And whenever we took the train down, we'd get off at Sheridan Square Park. That was the exit. So, and it gave us the opportunity to see the sculpture, which was always, we have to do that when we go to New York. So we get out, we walk into the park, and we see all these people in the Smokey the Bear outfits. You know what I mean? The National Park Rangers are in the park. And we said, something's going on. What's going on? We couldn't, and so we go up to them and we say, what's happening? They said, didn't you hear? I said, what? They said, 10 minutes ago, President Obama declared the Stonewall Inn, the park, the surrounding area, a national monument. And so we said, well, you're not going to believe it, but we were the models for the sculpture. So it became a whole thing with photographs, and we were on TV and blah, 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 blah. But it was, it was just totally random. We had no idea. We just happened to be walking through at that time. As I said, it was Beshert, which is one of the titles of one of the chapters.
And so, being that you have had this level of notoriety surrounding the statue, and you have this history with the nightclub, and you have all these ties with feminism and gay rights activism, I did want to get your sense. I mean, I'm going to be 50 this year, so we lived in, a little bit of a different time.
Yes.
And, so flashback 50 years ago, and to what you're seeing today, with almost this commonality of gender fluidity, of men being able to marry, or, it's not illegal for people to marry people of the same gender, and of all of this liberation, for lack of a better word. And I know that it goes back and forth and the story's not done yet, but like, if you could talk to yourself 45 years ago when you were in that nightclub,
Yeah.
what's your impression on this progress? I guess is my.
It is. It's all cyclical in a way. We make 10 steps forward, and then the cycle hits where we go back 5 steps. But each cycle brings us further and further towards acceptance. Now, with that said, with the media acceptance, that was the big thing. At Sahara, we as much as I wanted to be visible, that was part of my motive, visibility, so that people would see that loving people of the same gender did not make them mentally ill or freaks or whatever. People still contend with that now, even though it's easier in a way. People still internally have to go through the struggle of accepting that they're different from the mainstream. Okay, so everybody individually has to deal with that kind of acceptance of and embracing of the fact that they're different. So even though we're moving forward, that we deal with the same the same individual issues, and the most important thing is that I really think that it's so important not to take our advances for granted, because things can change at the drop of a hat. They really can. You could see right now with Texas, that abortion issue. That abortion issue is, if that's accepted, is the precursor to people attacking gays and lesbians again. It's all within the same thing. And what that's really about is not necessarily so much about abortion or gay and lesbian rights. It's about maintaining white male supremacy. It's about holding on to their power. And that will always be a struggle. So we have to stay very, very vigilant, and very, and don't drop the ball, because it's always a threat. It's always there. Nobody wants to give up power, especially this, people who have dominated in the patriarchal society for so many years.
Yeah, I think that. I was just going to say, that's why your book is so important. That's why books like this are so important. It's just more is what I say.
That's
The
how
more-
we can fight back. Exactly.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you for your answer and thank you for everything you're doing and congratulations. I can't wait
Thank
to
you,
read the book.
honey. Thank you.
Hey,
Thanks.
Leslie, back to the question about the autograph book. If we leave our name and address below in the chat, could you send people book plates with your autograph?
Yeah, I could see now. You know, it's so funny. Erin wrote me and said something about book plates. I didn't even know what she was talking about. You know, I mean, this is the first book I've ever written, and it's. I mean, I hate to say it's probably going to be the last book I've ever written because I really said what I needed to say. But and she mentioned book plates. I said, what the heck are book plates? But now I know because I had to sign book plates. We're donating to the National Gay Task Force. So I know what book plates are.
Right, so you just send them in a
Yes.
little envelope and here you go, and then everybody can have a signed,
Yes.
signed
That's
autograph.
a great idea. Thanks, Erin. What would I do without you?
I don't know, you know I wasn't gonna let it drop.
That's a great idea.
Leslie, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Michaela, or how do you say your name, has hand up next.
Hi, Michaela. Hi.
Hi, Leslie. My name is Michaela. So you
Nice to
got
meet
it right. And thank you so much for what you just said about being ever vigilant. As you know, I was a Red Stocking in 1969 when we were the first group to try to change the abortion laws. And I can't believe I'm still going to be marching for that again.
Well, thank you for your efforts.
I had an interesting, I think it's an interesting question for you because I've never heard the answer to this, but you know, as you know, I was in the GLF, the Gay Liberation Front. We were the women who closed cookies. We were out there leafleting, you know, the mafia tried to kill us.
Wow.
To bring the women, we started those dances at Alternate U on 14th Street, right down the street from Cookies.
Michaela, you have a story to tell because I didn't even know that about you shutting down Cookies.
Oh yeah, we were the women that
That's a real story.
The Gay Liberation Front said because Flavia Rando and I were both Italian, we were the ones that were chosen to leaflet the bar, to get the women out. So when the mafia would come out, they'd start chasing us. We go, non toccare, io sono sangue, don't touch me, I'm blood. So,
Really?
but anyway, my
Funny.
question is, you know, so one night, because we emptied out Cookies and we were right down the street having these fabulous dances with the women, the mafia came with guns to our dance.
Wow.
And, you know, tried to scare the hell out, but we wouldn't give them the time. I said, can I help you, gentlemen? Because I slammed the money box and gave it to Donna Gottschalk to run down the back stairs. But anyway, so they made the first big mistake they made. They went up to Martha Shelley and they went, do you know who we are? And Martha Shelley said, I don't know who you are. I don't give a damn. She said, do you know who we are? We're the Gay Liberation Front. But anyway, my question to you is, because I had wonderful times at the Sahara, loved the Sahara. Did you ever have harassment from the mafia because you were women in a business that they thought they owned? So I'm just gonna be quiet, listen to your answer.
That's interesting. Just a footnote. The first club I came out at was Cookies. So, and because at that time, it was, I guess in the early 70s, I had the only information I had about any lesbians was the organization, the Daughters of Bilitis. And so, Michaela, did you by any chance read the book yet?
Which book? Your book?
My book, yes.
No, I haven't, Leslie.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
that's all right. Because
I know all about the Daughters of Bilitis and
yes, of course.
Sea Colony, Gianni's. I knew them all. So
exactly. So we had called them from a payphone to find out where we could go. We wanted to go to a lesbian bar for the first time. I didn't know any lesbians. I'd fallen in love with this woman. They wouldn't give us any information about where to go. I didn't understand it at the time. I'm calling for help and you're not telling me where to go. Well, it turned out they wouldn't do that because they were all mafia-owned clubs. They didn't want to support the mafia. Well, long story short, we ended up getting lost in Harlem and getting held up at knife point trying to find this club, Cookies. So anyway, But in terms of mafia involvement, we were harassed by by state organizations like the State Liquor Authority. When we first tried to get a liquor license, they wanted us to have affidavits signed by our closest male relative, saying we weren't mafia or prostitutes. Can you believe this? But that's what it was. Like, because where did women come off opening a club? And so that way we were harassed a lot by agents, of the government. In terms of the mafia itself, we were very, very naive. We were young women. We had heard about it. Everybody would say to us, Jesus, isn't the mafia involved? And we'd say, no. Well, we had a very, very well-known progressive lawyer named Sid Davidoff, who had worked under John Lindsay's administration. And he had some really good connections. So at one point, there was a club next to us called Pegasus, which was mafia run. And this guy comes over to me during the afternoon, because I used to open the club in the daytime to do work. And he comes over to me and he goes, really like out of a grade B film. I got friends in Brooklyn, and the girls here are leaving their glasses on the stoops. And I don't want to call my buddies in Brooklyn, and this kind of thing. But we called Davidoff. Davidoff knew some people, and they never bothered us again. So we were relatively free of that. When I was a promoter, I started promoting clubs in 1980. I remember the first club we promoted, the mafia came to the owner and did a number on him, and the owner got really frightened. And I think he ended up paying the mob some money every month to keep them at bay. But for us personally, no. That was really it. We didn't. I think it was just that things were changing. Our timing with Sahara was really on the cusp of big change. That the laws had changed because the DSM no longer categorized homosexuality as a disease. The authorities no longer had the ability to shut down clubs. They always had that as an excuse. These are mentally ill people. And with the growth of the gay and lesbian movements, the tide shifted. And I don't think the mob was as invested in being involved because it was too visible at that point because of Stonewall and everything. So it was a combination of factors that allowed us to do what we did.
All right, babe, what are you going to get? Turkey?
Whoops, Thea? I don't know, honey. Do you want turkey?
Sorry, guys.
Send it over for me.
Zoom caught.
Hey, Leslie, Jane has a question in chat. When you were writing this book, did you experience concern about including any particular parts? If so, can you share what parts and the concerns?
Yes, of course. Well, and this even makes me a little uncomfortable just to answer because it was hard for me to include it. My parents are passed, my brother has passed. So that gave me a freedom to write things about my family that I wouldn't have included. The fact I had never told anyone that my father had gone to jail. Never told anyone. So that was, out of respect for his memory and my mother, who was extremely private, but because of, it was a part of my life that I really felt was important. And when I had an editor working with me, she said, you're going to be surprised at how many people are going to relate to this in their own ways, and this is what your intent is with the book. So that was one of the situations. Another situation that I was uncomfortable was talking about the drug use by my partners and me. I mean, I did it also, but it wasn't like that. So I felt uncomfortable about that, but I did give each of them the book in manuscript form to review and let me know if there's anything they wanted to take out. And at that point, they said, no, it's okay. It was then. That was then. This is now, you know. And, you know, that time we were young and it was, you know, it was crazy times, pre-AIDS. It was nuts. We were nuts. Fun and crazy. Oops, did the volume go off? Whoop.
Nope.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions for Leslie or anything else you might want to share with her or us?
I remember the first night I went into Sahara, and I think maybe it was the first lesbian club I went into.
Wow.
And I walked in the door, and there were so many women who would come straight from work. They had briefcases,
Mm.
had suits on. They were professionals, and I looked around and I thought, oh my God, this is me. There's no way out now. This is me. You know, I thought, who knows? You know, you think, is this a passing phase? Am I going through this? No, it's like me. Maybe it's nope. I walked in that door and I don't know whether my heart burst with happiness or sunk to the floor or both.
Well, you know, that was our motive. That was our intention, was for a woman to walk in and feel proud.
Yep.
You know,
And
to feel proud.
that was that.
Yeah, because before that, the clubs were really kind of dives.
Moment, as you know, like it was yesterday. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, honey. Thank you.
Leslie, Lynn has her hand up. Go ahead, Lynn. You were up first.
Hi, Leslie. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
And I did read the book.
Ah.
Yeah, and incidentally, it pried me out of this mentally lazy funk I've been in. I'm like, I've got to read something. I've got to read something.
That's
And I
great.
thought this came in the mail, and I picked it right up. Thank you for that.
Oh,
Breaking
thank
me out of
you.
that spell. And I just there's a part in the I just love the fact that, to me, you exemplify, like, to be an activist, you don't have to be standing on a street corner with a sign. There was so much, you know, impact, and the timing was right. I have to say, that quote you have under the picture of you and Beth on the beach by Kim Green
Yes.
rocked me to my core. I know you didn't write that particular piece, but where she says the unthinkable, a world walking backwards. I read this to anybody and everybody who would listen.
Oh, that's what you. I wish.
Said, it's
I
such
wish
a
Kim was
fragile
listening.
thing.
Yeah, it's such a fragile. Kim
So fragile.
Green, just to give her due. I hired Kim as an editor and a coach when I was writing the manuscript, and came to the point where I was just like saying, I'm not happy with it. It's not there yet. And some friends, you know, people who do books and write, said, hire an editor. Well, you know, so Kim came to me again through Carol Lee Shepherd. They worked together at Sony Records, and she really helped me polish the book, and added things to it. And so when she wrote that, I really said, I cannot claim that I wrote that. That's Kim, you know, that's a beautiful, beautiful section, a piece that she wrote. So yeah, she really helped me put the book together that way.
And just one last thing, if I may.
Sure.
There's a lot of poignant moments, and you know, it's a real we are there thing. I'm 64 years old, so I was young enough to be really enamored by the whole scene. And oh yeah. And the one thing that really jumped out at me, where you said that you had this inner core, this inner fortitude, you don't even know where it comes from. I really kudos to you. You're blessed to have that.
Yes.
And when Beth came to you and said, Stephen says I'm allowed to see you, and you said no, I mean, if that moment hadn't occurred, your whole relationship might have been founded on something completely different, not strength of that, the fortitude of character that it took you to say that. I just have so much admiration for it. It's a brave move,
Thank
big
you.
time.
You know, it's so
Okay.
interesting because at the, like in our 20s, I already had quite a few relationships. I never thought I was going to, at that point, I never thought I was going to find somebody for my lifetime partner. I never thought that. I thought I'd find, consecutive lovers, and it was fine, that was okay. So when we fell in love, I mean, I had already had the experience. We always shared, and this is why we're still together. It's 45 years. Next month, by the way, is our 45th anniversary. So, yeah, my baby. So, it's always because we were totally honest with each other. We really, really tried to be honest with each other, and trusted each other's integrity. Before that, I would have relationships, and I always felt there was some kind, a lot of times there was some kind of game being played, a win-lose game. I wasn't interested
Right.
in a win-lose game. I was interested in loving and being loved, in as, honest a way as possible.
I love that one piece of advice, the only one that I know is when you said at certain junctures in a relationship, just surrender. That's the best, just do it.
I mean, if you know that other person is a good person and an honest person and has integrity, then step away from the ego stuff and the sex stuff and the passion stuff, and look at this person as another human being who you love and trust, and surrender. So
Thanks.
thank you. Thanks.
Leslie, Carolyn's hand is up as well. Carolyn, you're on the mic.
Hey, thank you so much, Leslie.
Hey.
I really wanted to thank you. I friended you on Facebook as soon as I found out about your book. I was a kid going to your club.
Wow.
And I shouldn't even tell you because I shouldn't have even been there.
How many people have told me they were underage?
I was totally underage. My friend was the coach check at your place, Madeline DeFeo.
Okay.
And I would hang out with her. I was 16. If it was 76, I was 16 years old.
Oy.
And I remember, yeah, there was a Greek diner or something.
Oh yeah, the Silver
Right?
Star. Next door.
We would go there and have breakfast. But I want to tell you how much your club had meant to me, even after all of these years. I am a Brooklyn girl, born and bred, and it was a big deal for me to cross that bridge and go to your club, go into the city. It was a big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
And now anybody living in Brooklyn is not from Brooklyn. So they don't understand the Sahara. They don't understand the
Going
vibe
to the city, what it is to go to the city. Yeah.
Because you know what? Brooklyn now is cool. So they don't get it.
Yeah.
But I would really want to thank you. You played such a big part in my life, coming out and recognizing that I'm a lesbian and being surrounded from what I remember, everybody looked great. Everybody had great pants on. Everybody was dressed, not like the clubs today. Everybody looks like a pig. And I remember back then, everybody had Gloria Vanderbilt jeans on. And so again, I don't want to belabor it. I just want to thank you so very, very much for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Sweet. Well, we're a little over an hour, so I don't want to hold you too long, Leslie, but does anyone else have a question or comment? Anything else you want to share with Leslie? If not, I think we'll just say thank you so much.
Elaine has waving her hand around.
Oh, sorry.
Let's scroll through the video.
Can you hear me?
Elaine,
Yes.
there you go.
Yes, I actually go by Adita, but I met you on
Oh,
Facebook.
yes, of course. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, and I'm sure my wife probably
Adita.
hung there because she was in New York a lot about that time.
Right.
But the other thing was she was an activist and she did all those things. She went to Summit and marched, and I loved everything about your book. But one of the main things is why I'm so, other than it's a fabulous book, I feel like there's so many young people. Like I belong to an ashram meditation center, and they always have, we have meetings with all the gay people and everything. And I don't know if they get how hard it was back then. And what I love about you is everybody knows the Betty Friedens and all those people, but here you are running a club at the time, but you were an activist on top of it. And I don't know, I just feel like people should know about that and really have your book.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, that was one of the things that really motivated me to write this book. There were two strong motivating factors. One was that, again, nobody was, 30 years after Sahara, not one word had been written about it, not anywhere.
Right.
And I really felt that it really made me upset. And it made me upset on a deeper level than just me. It made me upset because it just demonstrated the lack of interest in women's stories.
Right.
And we were just going to be added to the pile of forgotten women's history. And being a historian and witnessing all these, finding out about women who just never, were recognized. I said, if we don't write our stories, nobody's going to write them. And so that was a main motivating factor for someone who never considered themselves a writer. I wanted to fill in the gap of history to a certain extent. And it's so important. And then you start to question, which is what I say in the book, who values our experience? Who's responsible for valuing our experience? You can write, and so many people did, you can write about the clubs in the 70s, which they did, which was like Studio 54 or The Saint or, whatever these mammoth big clubs were. But Sahara was, to women, as important, if not more so, because they finally were given some respect and a showcase for their talents. So that was one of my main motivating factors for writing this. The other motivating factor was that there was a sculpture of Beth and I thought it would be people in generations to come may be curious about who these women were. And I thought it would be very important to let them know that these were women who were in love and spent their lives together, and that they could find joy in their lives. And so for young people who were doubting their sexual identity or their gender identity, I wanted them to know the backstory of this sculpture. So that was it. So I appreciate what you're saying, because it is, our stories really have to be told. They are important to women. And
I agree.
And to educate them, that we have things that matter to us. And, you may think it's not important, but Sahara was important to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think you did a great job. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to meet you.
Yes, thank you. You too. You as well.
Thank you.
So Leslie, what actress do you want to play you in the movie?
I've been getting that question, and it's.
I'll bet.
I had to write down her name. Wait, hold on, I'll tell you. I thought, I didn't know. I saw this woman on a movie recently on, made for, I think, Netflix or something, called Kate. And she's a female assassin. It's one of those kind of movies. And she was so great at it. Her name was, this actress is Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I thought that she would be a great person. I would love her to play me. And then I think for Bethy, I thought of, oh, what's her name? The beautiful woman, Margot, what's her last name? Well, all right, I can't remember. But yeah, Margot, oof, I don't remember her name. She's a very popular actress. But anyway, Bethy was, and I'm sure Erin will back this up. I mean, you know, we're old now, we're 74 years old. But Bethy back in the day was absolutely a knockout gorgeous, you know? Erin.
Margot Robbie.
Margot Robbie, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, Margot Robbie. That's who I thought of playing Beth in our early years.
Well, I really enjoyed the book, and I look forward to seeing the movie.
You and me both, from your mouth to God's ears.
But I'm so glad you wrote it. I'm so glad you shared the story. I had never heard of Sahara before,
Yes.
and that's great. It's just,
Yeah.
we do
Thank
have to write our stories, and we do have to get them out there.
Yes.
So thank you so much, and thank you for joining us.
And thank
A
you.
reminder to everyone, especially if you're in New York, please stop by the bookstore. We're inside the LGBT Community Center. We have a long name that you might forget, Bureau of General Services Queer Division, but we're affectionately known as the Bureau.
The Bureau.
So please stop
Thank
by.
you.
And if you're
Thank you,
not-
Greg and Donnie, and thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thank
sweetie.
you.
for
Thank you,
doing
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
that. Yeah, it's
Thank
wonderful
you.
to see you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Leslie.
Thank you. And thanks.
Have a
honey.
great night.
And you
That's
can find
great.
the recording on you can find this recording on our YouTube channel. So look for the BGSQD YouTube channel.
Yes.
We streamed live.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you,
people
guys.
can see after the fact.
Yes.
All right, have a great night, everybody. Thank you again
So
so
thank
much.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye.
You as well.
Bye-bye.